Middleton City Hall for the Middleton Common Council. Today is January 2nd, 2024. It is 7:31 p.m. With this call to order of the regular council meeting, I'm requesting roll call, please.
Okay, Alder Schaefer.
Here.
Wilkes.
Here.
Cole.
Here.
Mayor Kuhn.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Hanairo.
Here.
Lorman.
Here.
Crow.
Here.
Okay, prior to public comments, I'm going to start with proclamations. Starting with the proclamation honoring Jack Hall on the occasion of his 100th birthday. Alder Crow.
A proclamation honoring Jack Hall on the occasion of his 100th birthday. Whereas Jack Hall is a World War II veteran who will be celebrating his 100th birthday on January 3rd, 2024. In addition to being a highly decorated combat veteran, he is also a father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and successful businessman in the Middleton community. Jack was also instrumental in many community projects, such as the community gardens, both in Madison and Middleton, the Veterans Tribute in Middleton, and the new clubhouse at Pleasant View Golf Course. And whereas Jack is a graduate of Madison West High School and a U.S. Army veteran, and whereas Jack was born on January 3rd, 1924, and enlisted in the Army on December 7th, 1942 at the age of 17, and headed to basic training in Salinas, Kansas. He departed the United States in November of 1943 from Hamptons Road, Virginia, and headed for Casablanca, Morocco, aboard an unescorted luxury liner with 15,000 troops. After 7 days at sea, the liner arrived in Morocco, where he spent 3 days on a train headed for Oran, Algeria, before catching a ship to the Naples, Italy replacement depot, where he was assigned to the 36th Division out of Texas. And whereas Jack served in combat from January 6 to June 6, 1944, until Rome was captured. Shortly after, he was part of the invasion of southern France at Fruas on August 15, 1944. On August 28, 1944, Jack destroyed an enemy roadblock in Alex, France. This action resulted in him being awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. And whereas on September 17, 1944, Jack was shot by an enemy sniper in the chest below his right shoulder while near Redon, France. He was discharged a year later in September of 1945 and returned to Madison in October of 1945. And whereas, along with the Distinguished Service Cross, Jack Hall was also awarded the Purple Heart, the Bronze Star, and the French Legion of Honor. Now, therefore, the Common Council of the City of Middleton and Mayor Kuhn hereby thank Mr. Hall for his distinguished service to his country and honor him on the occasion of his 100th birthday on January 3rd, 2024.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the proclamation honoring Jack Hall on the occasion of his 100th birthday, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the approval of the consent agenda as recommended to council by committee, commission, board, including the approval of the December 19th, 2023 Common Council minutes and the audit of the bills to be paid as recommended by the Finance Committee. Is there a motion?
This is Hanairo. I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
This is Jackson. I'll second.
Any comments? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I just realized I forgot the public comment, sir. So let's step back.
Yep.
Okay. First two, there is a wish not to speak is Craig Ostrom. Is that correct, sir? Or do you wish to speak? Okay. Mr. Ostrom opposes the zoning of the MBR of Middleton Beach Road. Accurate? And next is Kathy Ostrom, and she wishes to speak. So please state your name and your address. And you have 3 minutes, ma'am.
You've heard me talk here before, and I want to thank you for letting me talk again. It's not easy for me to stand up and talk to people, but it's important because this is very dear to me. First of all, you are to be congratulated for the sustainability award that you received, and I know you work all very hard. But I do think you need to take a step back on this zoning on Middleton Beach Road, soccer field. I read your statement in the City of Middleton Facebook page. It says, "Let's talk sustainability." Do you know that the City of Middleton recently earned LEED Gold certification? So, I mean, that's wonderful. I come from a family of environmentalists, so I do care too about our environment. And it went on to say it's not just an award, it's a commitment to energy efficiency, green building, and a healthier environment for all. And that's where I struggle, because I don't think this is going to be a healthy environment for all. I want to go on to just read something one of our neighbors wrote, and she gave me permission. It says, "Middleton has a prime opportunity to show its commitment to sustainability by voting against the high-density, high-rise apartments planned for the green space at the corner of Allen Boulevard and Mendota Avenue that would add over 1,000 people and 750 cars to a former wetland within 250 feet of Lake Mendota. Commitment is not what we say, it's what we do." The LEED Gold certificate was earned by the actions of previous city officials. As a community, let's dedicate ourselves to keeping Middleton worthy of the gold. And I think that speaks for a lot of the people on Middleton Beach Road. I think we tried to compromise. I think they would have liked to have seen even smaller single-family homes. I've been in a lot of apartments. I've shown apartments. And it's not a home, you don't own it. I think we're building a transient community here. People that live in apartments, and not all, certainly, don't have that pride of ownership, but they may want that pride of ownership. I've had friends cross the street on Allen Boulevard and get hit by a car. We have school children, buses trying to get through. This is a disaster. A big high-rise building with that many units. I feel like we're catering to the developers and they're laughing all the way to the bank. And that's at our expense, your constituents. So please slow the process down, make the right decision. Let's get some testing, water testing, traffic
That's
testing.
time.
And the fact that we have a lot of vacant apartments in this city already. Thank you.
Brian, is there any interest from the people on video who would like to speak?
I don't presently see any hands open. Anybody that's online participating via Zoom wish to speak? I see one. Jenny Cordwin has raised her hand.
Ginny, please proceed. And include your name and address, please.
Yes, okay, I'm getting, I have a,
I can hear you.
okay, I don't know, I have some pop up on my screen, I don't know what this is. Anyways, I'm Ginny Corwin. My address is 2319 Middleton Beach Road, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Middleton Beach Road residents. We know you have received numerous emails requesting you to postpone the rezoning of the Allen site, and they have included many factual reasons and concerns why this would be a good thing to do. So I'm not going to repeat those concerns here. We have heard your arguments from your past decisions, like it is very rare for the council to override the Plan Commission's recommendation. At the Plan Commission meeting on December 12th, the decision was divided 4-3 to recommend the proposed zoning of this site. The discussion was almost exclusively on housing with little regard to managing stormwater and runoff to the lake. Commissioners have, have stressed the need to help Dane County meet their housing needs, but there is no mention of helping Dane County with their lake cleanup efforts. The county, together with Clean Lakes Alliance, has spent millions of dollars on a multi-year effort to improve the quality of our lakes. Is there no balance between developing housing and protecting the quality of our lakes? This site offers the one opportunity for Middleton to support both efforts. Until managing stormwater on the site is thoroughly evaluated and we know how much land it requires and where best to develop it, the zoning can only be second guessed. Once the zoning map is final, it becomes a legal document and will be difficult to change if needed. Why zone the east side of the site multi-residential low-density housing when this portion of the site has the lowest elevation on the site? Since water runs from west to east and south to north, the logical place to manage stormwater would be in this space. Finalizing the zoning for the Allen site now, before evaluating stormwater management's requirements, is putting the cart before the horse. And if the zoning is found to be inappropriate, we do not trust that the council will have the desire to change it. This decision should not be rushed, as it can be devastating consequences to the lake and the Dane County watershed for generations to come. We ask that you, the alders, seriously consider postponing the zoning of this site tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Up next is Tina Lemon. Name and address, please.
You're still on mute.
Thank you for waiting. My name is Christina Lemon. I'm at 2519 Middleton Beach Road. And I'd like to thank you for allowing us to speak again tonight. As 43-year residents of Middleton Beach Road, my husband Richard Lemon and I have, we urge you to delay the rezoning of 2159 Allen Boulevard to avoid irreparable damage to the watershed, to green space, to Lake Mendota, and the good neighbor city. Dozens of members of our community have publicly spoken out against development of this site. No constituents have spoken in favor of the mixed-use avenue zoning, which allows 80% coverage of the lot with impermeable surface. Middleton's Water Resources Management Committee recommended 35% or less, ideally 0% coverage of the lot. The Common Council should heed the advice of their own experts and delay the rezoning of 2159 Allen Boulevard until a detailed proposal for stormwater management can be evaluated. Please hear our voice. There should be no rush to make an ill-informed decision that will last for the next century. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I do not see anybody else with their hand up.
Moving on, thank you for the public comments, everyone. Moving on to agreements. Number 1, assignment of hangar land lease lot 15 agreement from Compass Bravo Lane LLC to GD Jones Hangars LLC. Got a motion?
Norman, so move the motion that we approve the reassignment of hangar land lease.
And is there a second?
Shoot for a second.
Is there any comments or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the assignment of hangar land lease lot 15, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to planning and zoning. The first item is the presentation and discussion of zoning sign outdoor lighting ordinances rewrite project.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I know the packet has hundreds of pages that you're all probably wishing to discuss, so I'll simply start by asking, is there any question? Just kidding.
Going to say, please be kind to us. It sounds like there were a few people who
Yeah.
were a little under the weather during the holidays, so
So,
through it.
sure, I'm happy to do that. I'm not going to go through the entire presentation because it was included in the packet starting on page 43, but I did want to touch on a few things. Where am I playing to this way? That's it? Thank you. So we've been at this now for, 2024, so 3 years. We started in April, spring of 2021. We went out for requests for proposals, and that culminated in 7 firms responding. And after interviewing 3 finalists, the Plan Commission recommended Vanderwall and Associates, in large part because of their extensive experience with Wisconsin land use law. And they gave us the best presentation, the best proposal, we felt. And they actually ended up doing a little bit extra work from what was in the original scope and came in under budget. Then through 2022, we drafted the ordinance in earnest into 2023. That took us into 2023, including the zoning, sign, and lighting ordinances. And we also began drafting the zoning map during this time later in 2022. And then that became public, the ordinances and the map became public late summer of 2023. All I want to mention on this slide is that our code, which is over 40 years old, has been fairly inflexible, resulting in numerous rezonings to planned development districts, which in the new code is being called planned unit development. And so I just wanted to point out that we have several dozen, 60 to 75 or so of these districts, and each of them has their unique set of zoning regulations. I'm not going to go into how the comprehensive plan recommended adopting the zoning or changing the zoning ordinance since that was in the packet. I'm going to skip over this just in the interest of brevity. What I want to mention here is that our zoning map is influenced by the existing zoning around the city, combined with our future land use map, which is a component of the comprehensive plan, and that led to the proposed zoning map. I do want to focus on this page. So it's been a pretty extensive process that we followed, as I touched on already with the timeline. We had an informal work group that consisted of members of the representative of the Plan Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, and Sustainability Committee, and that was endorsed by the council at the time it was established. The Plan Commission this year, starting in May, actually Plan Commission discussed this zoning ordinance 10 times during this year. It started in May with a review of policy decision guides that were drafted with the work group and the help of the consultant. The full draft of the zoning code was released August 22nd, the map shortly thereafter, and then also the sign code and the lighting code, as I mentioned. The city, 8 committees and commissions of the city, actually 9 if you count the airport commission in November, but in September, there were 8 that reviewed the pertinent excerpts of the zoning ordinance and lighting regulations that pertain to their areas of expertise. We then began a public involvement process that had 5 open houses. We publicized these meetings with a flyer in the utility bills. We had flyers posted around the community. We used social media and had other publicity. These open houses were attended by about 75 to 80 residents. We had quite a few residents that attended multiple open houses. Plan Commission then had this as a standing item September through December, and we've made some revisions to the ordinance based on their guidance and public input over the course of the last few months. The public hearing was held on November 14th, and that led to some additional changes.
Can I ask?
Sure.
did everyone have a chance to attend one of those open houses? I was able to go to one because of schedules, so I thought it was well attended. And good questions were asked. Is that how most people saw it? Okay, thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. The only thing I'm going to mention under the frequently asked questions, there's a document in your packet as well as posted on our project website that gets into a long list of frequently asked questions. The main one I wanted to touch on here is why are the planned unit developments in the city not being rezoned? And that's because, as I mentioned earlier, each has its unique set of requirements and standards, and oftentimes these are difficult to translate to new districts, but we did actually, as we created the new districts, take into account the type of development patterns that had been happening over the last 20, 30, 40 years, and that's why there's such an emphasis on mixed-use development in the new zoning code. However, the goal is to, where we can, and where we have the consent of property owners, in those planned development districts, to bring them into a new zoning classification in the future. So that is something we wish to do. It's especially easy when there's only one property owner, such as the city, for example. A lot of times people have asked, how does the new zoning code and zoning map affect their property? I simply wanted to emphasize that all the lots and structures in the city, even those that are not considered conforming today, will be considered will be considered fully conforming to zoning ordinance regulations. It doesn't impact repair and maintenance of existing development. It would only impact new construction and land use changes. That said, a lot of the thinking that went into the new zoning map was to apply that to lots that were conforming to the new zoning regulations. And that's one of the reasons why Middleton Beach Road got proposed to have single family high density, because under medium density, the lot widths, most of the lots in Middleton Beach Road didn't comply. So we are trying not to create new non-conforming situations with the zoning ordinance and zoning map. These scenarios were included in the packet, and I'm not going to go into them. I just touched on them briefly, but unless you have questions, I'm going to skip over this part. I'm going to highlight a few points on the next couple slides. Third bullet, one of the really big themes in the comprehensive plan was to provide more opportunities for a diversity of housing in the community, what's often called missing middle housing. And the new zoning ordinance accomplishes this by promoting mixed-use development as well as accessory dwelling units. Every single family zone, all the 3 zoning districts, as well as the 2 family zoning districts, will be permitted by right to have an accessory dwelling unit that can be up to the size of the residence, the principal residence. Currently, we only allow an accessory apartment, it's called, up to 500 square feet if it's with conditional use approval. So in the future, the new code would allow this as a permitted use. I also want to mention and emphasize that the current code didn't really address impervious surfaces well at all. We had something called lot coverage, and lot coverage did not include the 35% that you heard about earlier, did not factor in the driveways, walkways, and it also didn't take into account roof overhangs. So none of that was applied against the 35% standard. The new code does that. We also had a real emphasis with the new code and the zoning map to provide a range of lot sizes and promote increased density and building height along major street corridors, consistent with the comprehensive plan. For the first time, we are establishing bicycle parking standards. We also have electric vehicle parking standards and opportunities for alternative energy production. One of my favorite aspects of the new code is at the beginning of Article 3, there's a table, several pages long, that lists the zoning districts across the top, but for each column, and then the land uses down the right side by row. Both principal land uses, which are defined in Article 3, as well as accessory land uses like swing sets and fire pits and things like that. Very easy to find. The P stands for permitted, C is conditional, and if it's blank, it's neither permitted nor conditional in that district. Outside of the planned development districts, every lot in the city is going to have a new zoning classification. So there will no longer be R1, R2, B1, B2, B3, B4 districts, industrial districts. Everything will get a new zoning classification, new name. In most cases, it translates very closely to existing zoning, but with some modifications to types of land uses permitted in many cases. But generally, it's still very recognizable as R1, for example, single family is going to be called SR1 or SRL, excuse me, or SRM or SRH, which stands for low, medium, or high density. The land uses will still be single family along with the accessory dwelling unit that's permitted. The standalone commercial districts, B1, B2, B3, U4, will all be incorporated into mixed use districts. We're also with the sign and lighting code, hadn't touched on those much yet, but a lot of people maybe didn't realize a few years ago, about a decade ago now, there was a major Supreme Court case that restricted the ability to regulate signs by their message, by their content. And so we've addressed that and other legal issues with a new updated sign code. Lighting regulations, I'm really happy with the work we've done, and several of you and members of the community provided helpful comments to make our lighting code more dark sky compliant.
That is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
In case you all don't know.
Yeah, Mayor,
pretty
you've
exciting.
been helpful, and others on the council have as well. I appreciate that.
It's been great.
So to recap, we had extensive public input process early fall with these open houses. And I want to summarize the input we had at the formal public hearing that was held before the Planning Commission on November 14th. As you've heard tonight and previously, one of the main concerns is stormwater management and impervious surface ratios. The Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy, for example, provided testimony or input where they recommended reducing impervious surface areas. We went back, talked to our consultant, and made some minor adjustments in 3 land use categories. But what I did, working with my colleagues, is we did an air photo analysis of different properties around the city, both single family, 2-family, and multifamily, and looked at how much of these properties are currently impervious. And in a number of cases, they were at 40, 50% in a single family district. And that's for like in Stonefield, they were at 40% plus. And so the original recommendation was to have a 50% impervious surface area for low density single family. I actually proposed reducing it to 40%. The Plan Commission felt more comfortable at 45%. So if we had gone lower and cut it in half, which had been proposed, we would be creating many lots in the city that would be non-conforming, and it would be hard to add or even replace a patio. We just didn't want to create all these situations that would make it difficult in the future. Well, the patio would have been conforming, but it just would have created issues going forward with redevelopment. So we did take that public input, as we did all public input, into consideration and gave it serious consideration. A second theme was concerns about increased building height, development density next to single-family residences. Third, support for accessory. There was a support expressed for our ADU standards. Concern about land use restriction agreement process. The Madison Area Apartment Association has sent us multiple course of communications, and I worked with Matt Fleming and Larry Beckler on making sure our ordinance is comparable to what Madison has done. That's where we borrowed the language. We decoupled the process from the conditional use permit process. This is a way to get additional height on certain buildings in multifamily and mixed use zoning districts. So that linkage with the conditional use process is no longer there, and that was a source of concern. The fifth bullet is the air district. We had communications from the towns of Middleton and Springfield that prompted some revisions, and the Airport Commission then at that point was asked for their input, and that resulted in some changes back to the original language, but ultimately there was some revision and tweaking of the language. Heliports was a source of concern where heliports could be established. And so that is no longer listed as a conditional use or permitted use in any zoning district in the city other than at the airport. We also heard advice to remove certain services from industrial zoning so as not to dilute industrial activities. Former Plan Commission member Kurt Paulson was especially helpful with this guidance, and so we made some adjustments there. We heard the comment that the code doesn't go far enough, that we could eliminate single-family zoning altogether and eliminate minimum parking, and some communities have done this. But we felt that this code was the right approach for Middleton and didn't want to go too far, that we were ahead of where the public felt comfortable with the new zoning regulations. So the last three bullets pertain to the zoning map, sign ordinance, and lighting ordinance. We specifically made some changes from the original draft that was released in September. Middleton Beach Road, you've heard about that before. So we are recommending single-family high density based on lot width and impervious surface issues that are on those lots. The Allen Boulevard site you're familiar with. We also made some changes to the map in the lots along North High Point Road, west of the Beltline. So basically Greenway north to south of Capitol Brewery, but on the west side of the road, on the Beltline side of the road. And then the Lycon properties, there's 3 parcels there immediately west of the Beltline along Highway 14. And Alder Hanairo, we fixed a couple opportunities. We made a couple improvements north of Whittlesey Road in your district, as you know, and zone land that is wetland and conservancy land as conservancy instead of single family. So that was entirely appropriate. Sign ordinance has actually undergone very minimal changes since it was unveiled. We had questions at the public hearing about the display of promotional flags, and I had to have one typo in my presentation. So, actually it's fixed here, but online it was or emotional. So, but I figured most people probably figured that out. And questions about the use of sandwich boards as well. And then the lighting ordinance, we actually made quite a few changes there. One of your colleagues, counterparts in the village of Cross Plains, Cross Plains trustee, had an interest and experience in lighting ordinances and gave some very helpful comments that we incorporated into the code as well. Any questions on this?
Appreciate their
Yeah,
suggestions from our
certainly
friends
do.
to the west. So that's good.
Just a few points here on specific revisions we made following the public hearing.
Can you just
Sure.
pause for a moment?
I'm sorry, I had a quick question about the lighting ordinance,
Okay.
Sorry. All these notes. We've had specific developer who's concerned about lighting for his on-building lighting. Does this on the ordinance number 3A, building mounted lights shall be mounted and installed so that all light is directed downward unless the lights are decorative, in which case the light shall be directed toward the building. Does that satisfy said developer?
Probably not.
Oh,
Which
okay. I
page are
thought
you
that was
referring
gonna
to?
be a nice solution.
Where are you, 3A? I'm sorry.
In chapter 33 outdoor lighting
Oh,
code,
okay.
I'm on page 5. Intensity of illumination, section 3.
Sorry.
I don't mean for you to have to go into a deep dive. I just was hoping
it's
this
okay.
was going to be the nice solution.
Section 3, which letter? A, you said?
3A
Yep.
on building lighting.
Well, this language I don't think we've made any changes. This is an early version of the ordinance, but I believe this one we kept the same.
So
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. So the, for example, Old Middleton Center, the lighting around the top of the building, complies with this still?
There'll be less opportunity to do lighting of that sort in the future with this new code.
Okay.
So decorative lighting is intended to be more seasonal. I'd have to look at the
That's
exact
okay.
section. I'm sorry.
Maybe we could hold that question
Yeah.
for when we
Yeah.
get to that chapter.
We'll
Yeah.
get to it when we're chewing it up one bite at a time.
But
Thank you.
I like that question because I do remember that question from.
Okay, sorry about interrupting.
No, it's all right.
It's a great point.
No, I appreciate, there's a lot of material here, so I would actually welcome questions as they come up.
We will get to them. No
Okay,
rush.
fair enough.
You finish up this portion and we'll get to questions under ordinance first readings and the discussion pieces.
problem.
Or not discussion pieces.
So I already touched on a lot of this. Again, some reductions in the impervious surface ratios. We actually, in the course of dealing with not just existing property owners, but some people who are interested in a property on Parmenter Street, for example, along the way that people asked questions at open houses, public hearing, and outside of those forums that made us as staff realize, oh, wait a minute. Okay, this makes sense. And let's make sure that this meets the needs of the community in the future. So we actually, with the mixed use neighborhood zoning classification, made a number of adjustments so that it's much better tailored for the Parmenter Street corridor going north of University Avenue to the roundabout. So we really did try and do a good job of listening carefully to what people were saying. But at the same time, we recognize there's going to be some tweaks necessary once this is adopted. We're going to, in the next few months and over the course of this year, I don't doubt that we're going to find a few things here and there. Alder Hanairo has found a few things that along the way, and it may happen that a few weeks later that she missed one. So, and that we missed one. So,
My eagle eye.
Yeah. and so those are things that we can take care of in a cleanup ordinance amendment a few months from now. And I appreciate all those input, the feedback I've gotten from all of you and your questions along the way. It's really helped to make the ordinance better. The commercial requirement, that the big focus has been, how do we ensure that buildings that are on street corners have a commercial component and not have it be an onerous requirement that results in an empty building, an empty storefront. So we've had a lot of discussion about that. I already touched on most of this. I do want to say under Article 7, the last line there, I want to emphasize that. So we've added some language to that article, giving the Plan Commission the flexibility through its design review authority, to vary standards as part of their routine design review jurisdiction. And there's got to be a reason for it, but we again are trying to have the ordinance be. We're trying to establish some standards that reflect the wishes of the community as expressed by the comprehensive plan, and but recognize that sometimes there's a need to tweak a standard here and there if there's some unique circumstances that have arisen. So we're pleased with that addition. Since the December 12th Plan Commission recommendation, we continue to identify a few additional changes, and I summarized those in my memo to you from December 27th, and they're also briefly summarized here. Happy to answer any questions. The main point I want to make is that we were still tinkering with the impervious surface area definition. I thought we actually had included this language, but I must have missed a comment somewhere. So we're fixing that as well. We're proposing that be fixed. And what I would say for these revisions that are summarized here, it would be helpful to get the council's taking action to add that to the ordinance beyond the Plan Commission recommendation. That would be a helpful, if you're comfortable with those changes, it would be helpful for that to be a motion. So basically that.
Requesting that you repeat that final portion.
Sure. So these changes, so the Plan Commission gave you a recommendation. these changes were not part of that recommendation. Therefore, it would be helpful, and these are outlined in the memo that I gave you last week. So it would be helpful to have those be added or accepted by the council if you're comfortable with them, to add them so that the ordinance then you're dealing with is as amended. Does that make sense? So the plan commission as amended by the council. We'll get to that. So now we're in January, and this is your first official opportunity to weigh in on the ordinances before you. If you feel comfortable with them tonight, you can, it's before you, listed before you as first reading. If you have further questions or would like to see some more changes, we're happy to take answer any questions you have. And we're just hoping that we can wrap this up soon, because we have a lot of, it's been going on for 2.5 years now, and we'd like to bring this across the finish line very soon. I do recommend a 2-part approval process, which I'm sure all of you would support that as well. This is a pretty major ordinance change. It's one of the biggest ones that the city has faced in my time with the city, which is 25 years. So this is a big one. That's what I have for my presentation.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. And I do appreciate the PowerPoints that were shared, the multiple handouts that were shared, the FAQs, jump in, all the things that
I
are
want to
shared.
thank Mark Opitz for all of his dedication and time, and this is truly a magnum opus.
That's wonderful. It really is. It's a lot of information. One of the things I want before we move on to the ordinances is just to point out that I had time to see step by step from the Plan Commission perspective. So some of the late additions I may not be so familiar with because we didn't talk about it extensively. But I want to focus on that for a minute because it was a lot of meetings and a lot of robust discussions that were had. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them. If I don't ask them, it's not because it's not important. It could be that we've already had those discussions. In saying that, I'm going to move on to ordinances. I'm looking to my fellow plan commissioner as I'm talking in case I missed anything, but I look like I'm okay. Lots of discussion is more the point of that. On the ordinances with the first reading, let me read. Ordinances first reading, final action may be taken upon approval of motion to suspend rules under section 1.07 Middleton General Orders. Number 1, ordinance to repeal and recreate Chapter 10 zoning ordinance and official zoning map of the Middleton Municipal Code. Now, before I ask if there's a motion, I want to remind you that it's 294 pages, that chapter. I rarely ask common council to think about delaying in something, but having sat through Plan Commission with the over 690 pages, if I remember correctly, and going over things, I would like to consider delaying this for today for the first reading, if the council is open to that, because it's incredibly complex and there's a lot of things to think about. However, in saying that, this is the Common Council's decision. So is there a motion? Alder Farah?
Madam Chair, I would like to move that we walk through, review, and approve the additional changes since December 12th, as well as the items that we learned about today.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. This is Nelson.
I'm guessing you would like the presentation of it, or would you like to go to discussion?
I will do what the council wishes. If people are ready to vote on the memo that Mark shared with us, that's fine. But I do think discussion is warranted. I know I have a couple that I would like to talk about specifically.
And for those of you who have recent coughs, if you need to step out of the room to get water, please do so. If you have coughs and you need to go by Zoom, I also welcome you because this might be a long discussion. So with that, any discussion, Alder Nelson?
I just want to verify, the memo is the December 27th memo, I believe. Is that what you're referring to? And there was also one today that
Yep.
supplemented that.
Yes, and I'm specifically referring to the memo starting on page 37 of the packet. It's got zoning ordinance in green, additional changes since December 12th Plan Commission meeting. And then the memo that Mark circulated today with your excellent catch, Madam Council President, about the bird-friendly glass.
Page 37 of the packet.
of
We're on
the council
34.
packet.
It's on 34 right
Gotcha.
here.
All right, it's page 4 of Mark's memo. Yeah, that's it.
Got it.
And it's really just this page and the next one, because the changes to the zoning map that are on page 39, Mark, those were already approved by the Plan Commission, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's really just these 5 items as well as the items in the memo that we got today.
So is it okay if I read them into the record for people who are trying to read along? Online, it's not always easy. Specifically, we're discussing, wait a minute. This says definition
Yep.
of impervious surface area in Article 1. I have the wrong page. My apologies.
Must as well.
I am going to go on to number 2, allowable width of street facing garages in SRM and SRH districts, Article 2. Continue on. Number 3, accessory buildings associated with the community and market garden land use, Article 3. Number 4, vehicle access standards in Article 6. Number 5, in building parking versus surface parking, Article 7.
And then the last one is the bird-friendly glass design standards from today's memo.
Okay. Any discussion on amending is your motion to amend the chapter 10 to include those?
Well, to review them, and if we've determined that we can approve them all, that's great. But I think kind of like how, for those of you who weren't in the Plan Commission meetings, we would walk through the 10 or so points in Mark's memos and decide whether or not there was discussion on any of them. And typically, we just voted on the whole bunch with changes along the way. So I would defer to my colleagues first, since I've had ample opportunities to comment on the zoning code.
I only have one requested, amendment to section 10, and it really refers to the map on page 384, where and this really goes with the earlier part of Mark's discussion of the districts trying to eliminate as many PDD zones and consolidate, to a modern mapping system. And that the airport be not designated as PDD, but air,
Okay.
simply put. I don't know why the township's rationale of requesting it remain PDD, other than complicating things. I just don't know what the point of leaving it a PDD would be. Probably if we get into something down the road where we're trying to discuss something specific and point at a map and say, well, this is zoned as airport and therefore this is what we're discussing, as opposed to something that isn't. And that was the original recommendation from the Airport Commission at our November 30th meeting, and just, getting general input from the BOA as well and supporting that. So I would ask that, the council at least, I guess here and now, I'd make a motion that the council willing to simply vote on changing that designation on the map from PDD to AIR.
Okay, I'm really glad you had that. Brian, can we do an amendment since we're in the middle of an amendment? Or a motion for an amendment?
It would be a substitute motion. So you deal with if that motion had a second. So if Alder Lorman's motion has a second, it'd be up for discussion, and then the body would dispose of that motion and then go back to the motion made by Alder Hanero, seconded by Alder Nelson.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Did you have a comment, Alder Nelson?
Go ahead.
before? Okay.
I was
Alder
just,
Wilkes?
that can't just be added to the list of the other changes that we're discussing.
It could be. That would be another way to handle it.
I was just assuming we could add that to the list of 6 or 7 that we have going already.
I would prefer that approach, actually.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for that suggestion.
Yes, whatever's most expeditious
Okay.
and simple.
In that case, Alder Haniro and Alder Nelson, do you concur with that addition? The list?
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
well, I think ideally, we would have a list of items to add as one amendment. And like if we had a flip chart or a whiteboard, that would be great, because I suspect there will be others.
Anybody want to volunteer for whiteboard duty? No?
I see Mark's
Chart right over
fingers
there in the
already
corner.
moving over there on
Excellent.
this.
Let's make it
If
happen.
staff could keep track of the 6 items, now 7 that we have, that would be wonderful.
Do you want the
Yeah, go.
flip chart?
Yeah, go. Yes, continue talking.
Oh, you want that flip chart? Really?
Yeah, let's get this.
I didn't know it existed.
Well, to give everyone a chance to address their own coughs and think about their own comments, I'll, I guess, walk through my comments on the ordinance as a whole. First question I had is, in the memo, it says all 3 ordinances are undergoing final city attorney review. What's the status of that?
They've all been reviewed. I have reviewed all these proposed changes to the zoning code. I think Larry has already previously approved the plan commission version of the zoning code. Nothing that's been done with the sign code in some time, so I think that's all been entirely reviewed. I have not reviewed or completed a review of the lighting code, and as I sit here, agree to which Larry has reviewed the lighting code.
Okay, thank you for that, Matt. And then I had a question for Mark. I don't know if you saw my email kind of late in the day, Mark, I apologize, but since we were talking about the zoning map, I know that there's a currently zoned two-family lot on the corner of Century and High Road that is earmarked to be Avenue mixed use, but I also know it's next to the Sikh temple and that they are planning to expand their parking lot into that. So my question is, so would they have to get a conditional use permit since that's Avenue mixed use, which I have no objection to, but would they have to get a conditional use permit to turn that into a parking lot?
I did see that memo and then I forgot to get back to you. Sorry.
That's all right. Busy day.
Maybe we can look at the zoning map, when Brian gets a chance, please. That's on page,
Yeah, so there are two blue lots next to two pink, three pink ones. Nope. There you go. Yep. That area right there. So the blue rectangle to the northwest is the Sikh temple, and they actually own the property that's right on the corner next to them and have approached we've had a hearing actually about their desire to tear down the duplex that's on that site and turn it into expanded parking for their space. And I just want to make sure that since we know of that plan, and they bought the property with that plan, I want to make sure that they're going to be able to do that without too much difficulty.
well, another way to handle that would be to require that to a CSM to combine that with their temple
Okay.
property. Even though I saw your email, I actually forgot to get back and look into it. So I don't have a quick answer for you, but I'm going to research it as you're talking. So,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then just a note for my colleagues, Brian, if you can move up to where Whittlesey Road is. So the three lots that Mark was talking about are the green and a trapezoidal almost. Just below the cities, nope, further to, there you go, right next to Pheasant Branch Conservancy across Pheasant Branch Road. Nope.
You're up or down?
Sorry. It's to the left.
Kitty corner from Pheasant Branch Encampment.
Right there,
No,
Down.
go south,
Straight down.
go south.
down a little.
You're talking about by where you live?
Yes, so anybody who's walked in the conservancy, you might, Whittlesey Road is at the very end of it's right by the little tiny parking lot. Anyway, there's a path that you can see. It's a skinny little lot there. That's actually a path that the city owns and has paved, and the tiny little green space next to the park is a detention pond. And so those were on the flu map as established neighborhood, because this is all part of the Pheasant Branch Ridge development that I live in. Anyway, they show up on our conservancy lands plan as conservancy lands. And like I said, one has a paved path and the other has a detention pond in it. So I suggested changing those. And the bigger outlot that's north of that is wetlandy and wooded and serves to hold the city's stormwater. You can see there's a little creek above it. And since that was adjacent, I suggested why not turn that into, or designate that as conservancy. So it shows up that way in the flu map, and this change here is just to make it consistent with that. So I just wanted to explain that since that was my district. Mark, the other changes that we made to the zoning that you listed in your presentation, those were at the request of the property owners, correct?
The one for High Point Road was a request by Steve Schulfer Architects. It was not a request from every, I mean, I would have reason to believe that not every property owner would be aware of that change for that quarter. But the effect of the change from Research Park back to mixed use neighborhood, I believe is what we zoned it, would be to provide, I would argue, more opportunities for land use, different land uses, albeit instead of 4 stories, it'd be limited to 3 stories. That's a good point. They don't specifically know that. I mean, unless there was communication by Mr. Schulfer, which I don't know that would have happened, but
Okay.
That's a good point.
Okay, I had a comment about cultivation. I brought this to Mark's attention. I don't know if that change has been made or if
Yeah, I
it's-
changed that in the ordinance. It's not posted online, but I made that change, but I would like you to
Sure.
mention that as well.
So for whatever reason, cultivation wasn't on Mark's favorite table in the document. Cultivation was not listed as a permitted land use for the airport
Conditional.
district, and we already have cultivation at the airport, so that'll be.
Sorry to interrupt. Not a permitted, but a conditional land use.
Oh, it's
That's
conditional,
how it's gonna
right,
be. Yep.
okay. Yeah, but it wasn't showing up
Right.
as
So that should be
anything.
listed here too.
I had another question about cultivation, Mark. It refers to the raising of plants for consumption by farm animals is considered cultivation if said plants are consumed by animals which are located off-site. And my question, this is chapter or section 10.03.26, part 3. Why not include plants consumed by intended to be consumed by animals on site?
Agriculture 10.03.26.
Part 3.
With part 3, I'm there. Located offsite. I don't have a quick answer for you, other than actually that would probably be a agricultural use, maybe more suitable for the agricultural zoning district. I'd have to look into that.
I just want to make sure that since we have so many dairy farms, they often raise their corn to be consumed, hay to be consumed on site, so.
Yeah, I
It
understand.
just stood out this afternoon. Sorry, I didn't notice it sooner.
Well, these things crop up.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Accessory buildings, and this one is in your memo. So let me go back to my memo. This is item 3 in your memo from December. And it is reducing accessory buildings to 1,000 square feet instead of 1,200. And I think it's to make it or to bring consistency between the community and market garden land use and detached residential accessory buildings.
Correct.
And I don't see why that is necessary to, I don't think it's a problem to have those two be different numbers. Because one is a detached residential accessory building and the other is specifically for community and market gardens. And it doesn't seem like we would want to, those could be publicly owned or privately owned. It just doesn't seem to me like we need to have those two areas be consistent. And I would advocate for keeping the 1,200 square feet for the accessory buildings in a community garden.
The reason why I proposed this was because it specifically refers to accessory structures, and my colleagues and I think of accessory structures as having a cap of 1,000 feet. So we were just trying to be consistent to have one less number
Sure.
to memorize. I did talk to our planning consultant about this, our project consultant, and Ben had no objection to reducing it, but this is entirely a policy decision for the council. If you would rather see it remain 1,200, there's no reason. That was the only reason, was to try and be consistent.
Yeah.
So it's a difference of a 25 by 40 building versus a 30 by 40 building. That's the math.
Well, but it also is adding up all of the many different things that could be considered accessory buildings. And that leads me to my second point, which is one of the items that's included as an accessory building is raised / accessible beds. And I don't see that as, I think if they're accessible beds, like if their purpose is to make gardening possible to people with all mobilities, that should not be capped. That should be allowed. And raised beds in general are fairly common in garden plots. So I had concerns about that reference specifically. And this is, I don't have, oh, it's section, I don't know the section. Section 10.03.26. Oh, actually, it's right there. If you go to the memo, Brian, it's paragraph 3 in Mark's memo.
Yes. Page 5.
Yep. So under accessory buildings, paragraph 1 shows that raised / accessible planting beds are,
How would you like that to read? Or what are you suggesting?
I think your point is that really, there's so many of them in every garden that you put those in your garden, suddenly you've eliminated all other structures. Because you'll eat up 1,000 feet
Right.
really fast with raised garden beds. I don't
Right,
see
it's-
those as equivalent to the other things in the list.
yep, it's two things. It's raised beds are a common part of gardening.
Yeah.
And 2, if they're accessible planting beds, why would we cap we shouldn't be capping those.
Are you saying they're capped? You're thinking they're capped because of the definition below that
Yes.
of all accessory
Yes.
structures? I see your point.
Yeah.
So you could just take out raised and accessible planting beds.
But I wouldn't, I mean, I guess the way I would interpret this is I wouldn't consider a raised and accessible planting bed to be an accessory structure, but I understand.
But it's listed in this section. right under-
No, I understand why I mean, that wasn't the intent, but I understand what you're getting at. Because obviously garden art and, well, picnic table, things like that are not going to be counted against 1,000 or 1,200 square feet. So it sounds like we need to clarify the language a little.
Yeah, definitely. Because it sounds like you're saying, just the way this is structured, it sounds like it's saying all these things, the rain gardens.
Understood.
And yeah. Okay. And I still think I can see why in general, detached residential accessory buildings, we might want to limit those to 1,000 square feet, but I don't see specifically in a community and garden and market garden location why we couldn't go higher to 1,200 square feet. And then,
Could I comment just a
Sure.
way? If you just simply took your C1 and said the following non-accessory structures are permitted in that space. Because virtually every one of those is not counting towards that limit. And that would, that one word would, I think, fix that whole paragraph.
Well, but a tool shed would be an accessory structure. So I think,
restrooms.
we'll, I understand the intent here and we'll come up with that. I mean, it sounds like if the council wishes to, you're giving us guidance tonight for further changes to make. That's how I'm interpreting these suggestions. So, maybe this is something we would come back with at the next meeting, not maybe, but that's what we would do is come back at the next meeting with the changes. Maybe
Okay.
this is something even the plan commission would weigh in one more time.
And then moving back up to the previous page, the allowable width of street facing garages in SRM and SRH districts. In general, I think it isn't a good practice to regulate specific neighborhoods. The garage width for the SRM that's general enough that any property owner can take advantage of that. But why would we limit the change for SRH to lakeshore properties only? It sounds like it's because those properties specifically might face a problem, but we're saying that everything is legally conforming now. And if lakeshore lots need to redevelop in some way and address their garage width, they can go through the zoning variance process.
I have a simple answer. So the reason why I proposed the lakeshore language is because those are unable to have an alley be served by an alley. And so I didn't want to create a situation where this was a loophole that would allow future single family SRH zoning in other parts of the city, like Red Tail Ridge, for example. We still want to promote the alley loaded garages. And so lakeshore lots do not have alleys behind them. So I think that was the thinking behind it.
Why not just say lots that are not served by an alley or cannot be served by an alley?
Well, to say it cannot be, I mean, then a developer may come in and say, well, I don't want to design this neighborhood. It cannot be served because of topography or whatever reason. I understand what the trepidation here, but we really are trying to promote quality design and avoiding snout house design for, pardon the term, but that's a term that most of you maybe have heard, but that's what the intent here is. And when there was specific examples provided from this architect about the ramifications for that for a lakeshore property, I was immediately uncomfortable with singling out a lakeshore property, just like you were. And then I thought, well, if we make the change that applies generally to the entire district, the effect could be that we don't end up with alley loaded garages because they want to have garages in the front and it was a loophole. And then I thought to myself, well, the reason why this is an issue is because it's not alley served and can't be alley served because it's adjoining the lake. So that's why we came up with that.
You've got those same high densities thing on the north side of University, and they have no alleys there either.
Well, right. So existing development can't have it, but we wanted to make sure that as we develop in the future that we really try and steer people to, if they want a 2-car garage on a narrow lot, it really should be served by an alley.
Well, again, I don't think it's a best practice to tailor any section of the code to fit a specific neighborhood, even if their circumstances are unusual. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
And so I'm fine keeping it in for SRM, but not for SRH. I think they're.
Did you mean that the other way, I think?
No, because SRM doesn't refer to lakeshore properties, which is what makes it very specific.
Maybe I made a mistake in my memo.
The paragraph refers to street facing garages in SRM and SRH districts.
Right.
So the change to SRM is fine, but SRH specifically mentions it's got a difference between, or a distinction between non-lakeshore and lakeshore lots.
Right,
And I'm
and
just saying, I don't like the distinction.
Okay.
And I appreciate hearing from my colleagues on that one. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is, well, except for commending Alder Nelson for the bird-friendly glass changes, which I totally support. Since we're talking about birds, how about feather signs? I have
Good segue, like that.
I try. I
Feather
have
signs.
no objection. I have no objection to having more than one feather sign on a lot. I really don't see the reason to be so restrictive. And I mean, I specifically mentioned, like, what about where you see, the way it's written, it wouldn't allow those things where it's like, come vote now, or, they have different signs, and people were like, yep, that's the point. And I'm like, oh, well, I really don't have a problem with them. So I could go with relaxing that restriction on feather signs. That's all
I appreciate that because I did a 5K for the Friends of Pheasant Branch after we talked about it in Plan Commission, and they had their feather signs out. And I was like, okay, maybe we need to be a little bit less.
So is that something that needs to go on the list?
I would put it on the list. Thank you.
And I think what they talked about in Plan Commission a few times was just making it short term. So if someone says, you know, coffee being offered, that it's not 4 months of coffee, it's just 1 or 2 days or
So do we have to define a length of time?
I don't remember how that landed, so it's in there. Is it in there?
It says here, similarly, a feather sign may be displayed on a temporary basis in districts that aren't exclusively residential as long as there is no more than one per lot. The size does not exceed 8 square feet nor height of 6 feet. The sign is set back at least 6 feet from the lot line and hours are limited, but that no more than one per lot. So like if the sustainability committee went to a fair and brought their feather sign, they'd have to duke it out with somebody else who had a feather
Right.
sign. So yeah, I think that's a
With you.
problem.
But this is not restricting it in your house. It's just in a non-residential space. It says feather sign may be deployed temporarily in districts that aren't exclusively residential. That's a little vague.
Well,
Right.
the table figure 22.11 parentheses 2 identifies where feather signs may be displayed and they're not displayable in single family, 2-family or multifamily zoning classifications.
Do you have a page number for that?
It's
My apologies.
it's in the sign ordinance on, I don't have a page number, I'm sorry.
Should we hold that for chapter 22's discussion?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay.
But could you add that to your flip chart, please?
He's, the city administrator is now, is tracking this and had it
Oh, okay.
as on his document.
Much appreciated. Again, robust discussions. I hope you all are enjoying so many topics. I'm just glad some of them are up so I can keep track of them.
Well, it's on your screen right now.
Oh, there we
That I
go.
was reading, yes. Accessory buildings associated with community and market garden, the vehicle access standards, in building parking versus surface, bird friendly, rezoning Middleton Airport to air, adding cultivation to air district and number of feather signs permitted on a lot.
And number 3, Brian should also have keep the area at 1,200, the cap on, I can't think of what it's how it's phrased, but the
1,200.
yeah, the square footage
Yeah.
at 1,200 instead of 1,000, just for the community.
We need to add the garage facades as well.
Oh, yes.
That's number 2 up here.
Was it already on there?
Oh, yeah.
You're
you
right.
see-
Thought we were
Good
going
catch,
over.
though. It's good to be double checking this list. It's a lot of things. All right. Any thoughts? That's quite a large list.
So is the intent, pardon me, is the intent with this list, you had mentioned that might be you made a comment about that might be something the planning commission would want to
Well-
review again. Is the intent for us to identify this, to send it back, to have it come back? Like, where are we going with this list?
Given that a number of items have been added in addition to what was in the staff memos, obviously there's a need for additional editing. One of the questions I would have is, does this reflect the consensus of the council, or is this just a list that, I guess that's one question for the council to determine whether you're all in agreement with this. If you are going to postpone action tonight, which I think is based on the fact that there's all these changes, I think that's the only real course of action here. All I was saying earlier was that might be an opportunity to ask the plan commission at their meeting next week, if you wish for them to. I mean, it's not required to do that, but it's, if you wanted their guidance on these things, you could do that.
No, go ahead.
But just a clarification on this number 4 about the vehicle access standards. Read through your verbiage and I'm not quite clear.
I don't
10 foot versus
recall.
5 foot and what we're really saying on that.
I don't recall what prompted that to be typed on the list just now. I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from.
Number 4, vehicle access.
That was
Oh, I
from
think-
your memo.
Yeah, I think Brian's just pulling things from the memo. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I'll pull that up. I just didn't hear
It's
discussion about
page
it.
38 in the pack.
Right.
I love that we're dropping numbers like pros.
38.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, I'm with you. I'm tracking.
Oh, this was a very minor point. There was a discrepancy yeah, it's what's stricken in red is on corner lots, driveways shall be set back a minimum of 10 feet. But that seemed contradictory to a 5-foot setback elsewhere in the ordinance. I was just trying to be consistent. It's not I mean, I
So
felt
I guess you don't want the driveway sitting within 5 feet of the end of the edge of the property, right?
well,
And
yeah.
it's 10 feet now.
Well, for a certain, I think this applied only in the downtown zoning district, and I happened to catch it when we were dealing with a specific question the other day, and I saw that there was 10 feet in one spot and 5 feet in another, and I just felt, since it was a change, I felt obligated to bring it to your attention, but I don't think it's a policy. I don't think it's a
It's only
policy.
corner lots because there's only people who can bring a
Right.
driveway into their backyard.
Yeah, I don't see that as a source of concern.
Just wasn't clear what the issue.
Yeah.
And Brian, your list, if you would add the 3307 High Road lot,
Yeah, this will give me a chance to look into that further for you.
that's the one next to the Sikh
Yep.
Society Temple.
These are excellent questions. Glad we clarified on some things. Glad we added things. Glad we're discussing a list of lots of things. So on here, Alder Hanyrel and Alder Nelson had initially moved to read the first reading. Is that accurate, or is it to make the amendment? Can you help me remember?
My motion was to go, I envisioned this going in 2 steps. One, going through all the changes that Mark included in the packet and in his memo today on the bird-friendly glass,
Yes.
and incorporate those into the code. And then if the council felt comfortable with doing the first reading, we could do that. I'm fine either way. As a member of the Plan Commission, and Madam Mayor, I don't know how you feel about this, but as a member of the Plan Commission, I don't particularly feel it's necessary to take the changes on the screen back to the Plan Commission, because it seems like they'll say, well, did council approve these? If so, then we'll hand it right back. But again, I would like to hear from colleagues how they feel.
I'm comfortable with that, but we don't have all of this written yet. So to do anything with it until it gets revised, to be going too quickly.
I'm wondering if we, as the memo mentions that it is still currently under attorney review, if we need some more definitive review. I mean, or like that review is completed, or that review of this language is now completed.
Well, I mean, I think we've had a chance to review Mark's memo, and that's when the change, that's for the zoning code. Really, the only code that I'm not sure the degree of review that's going on is the lighting code, which nobody seems to be talking a heck of a lot about right now. But I mean, are you asking about whether it's reviewed to a point where the council would be adopting it tonight?
I guess that would be the question. If we are doing a first reading, or if we're gonna delay that first. I guess, Kate, clarifying.
Yeah, sorry, Alder Nelson.
Just to remind folks, if we do pass this, we can always go back and make amendments. It's best if we do it all now, because we have to start over with public hearings if we have to make any specific amendments after it's totally passed. But it's possible. So if that helps your decision, remember that.
Okay, so on the changes, that's all very good. And I appreciate everyone's insights. On the list of changes, even though they're not completely written out, but there's some guidance.
Yeah, we know what we're.
The concepts. Any further discussion on just that list of amendments?
If I may point out one more change that I realized right before the meeting, and I tried printing out and I wasn't able to get the printer to work. On page 82 of the zoning ordinance, please, and Matt Fleming, you're aware of this. This actually was an idea that came to mind this afternoon as I was reviewing the emails that I saw some of the emails that you were getting today, and this has to do with the PDD language, the parenthetical, Matt. So I added some language and tried to get it to you, but my computer was having issues before the meeting.
Sorry, could you say what page again?
It's my document's 82, but I'll read it to you here. It's just one sentence. It doesn't change any substance. It's under section 10.02.70. We're finding it. And it's parentheses 5, existing planned unit developments. I'll wait until it's up and then I'll read the sentence. It's just something in parentheses to add clarification. Oh, there you go. That's perfect, actually. So that's the full context of parentheses 5. So the part that's highlighted is language that Matt sent me this afternoon or whenever it was today. And I meant to include it in the memo, then I forgot. So this is, we would add this as part of your changes. If it's just a parenthetical. It's just clarifying that that anything that's currently zoned PDD will be treated as a planned unit development in the future, just to be clear.
Just to account for, we've kind of make a transition in terminology.
Right.
And I think that the way it was written, it's clear the intent that
Right.
everything that now we're calling PUDs, that all PDDs kind of continue as PD. But since we've got this mix of terminology, both in the code and then also in the zoning map, we thought adding this just to make sure that either way, either term that's being used, particularly with reference to the zoning map, that PDD, reference to PDD means PUD.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that I didn't have that in my memo. It was an oversight.
It's a lot of things. Going
Yep.
As we said from the start, chapter 10 is very large, and I appreciate everyone rolling with us tonight. All right, so yes, Alder Hanauer.
Brian, number 8 on cultivation. In addition, I had the question of plants. Does cultivation include plants consumed by animals on site?
And I have that one written down.
Yeah.
In my notes.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I didn't.
I just wondered whether the raising of plants for consumption by farm animals on site is allowed as well, because it specifically mentions to be consumed by animals off site, and that doesn't seem.
And what Alder Hanauer is referring to is adding the conditional use in the air district, but then the additional language, the clarification she's seeking pertains to Article 3 where cultivation is defined, and that's what she's referring to.
Essentially, the airport is not for grazed land.
Even if I send you
Right.
some sheep or goats in the future?
Goats
no?
have been there.
Having them wander out on a runway.
We have used goats at the airport.
We have used goats. at the
Yeah, that's
airport.
what I thought. Yeah.
It worked out marvelously.
Yeah.
So many dad jokes tonight.
Right, 9 o'clock, we start hitting that, find something interesting to say. All right,
Whatever you want.
zoning, it's my passion. All right, so we are working on the amendments. And as we said, we're approving the list of amendments on the screen to be added to the ordinance. So all those in favor of approving the amended topics on screen, please say aye.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just before we take a vote on that, can I just ask a clarifying question? So the original motion from Alder Hanauer and Nelson was for discussion and review of additional items discussed at the December 12th and January 2nd meetings. So my question is this, if this is approved, this list of 11, is that adding these items to the draft ordinance as it sits today, which would then come back as a first reading on the 16th, or how? I just want to make sure we clarify
It's a good question.
what we're doing.
Well, I was going to make a substitute motion to approve all of 11 recommended changes. I had not thought to clarify whether that meant we want to hold off on a vote. Again, I would defer to well, I'll tell you what, I will make the motion to approve the 11 changes discussed tonight. I'll leave it to someone else after that vote is done to make any other motion.
Alder Nelson, do you agree with her?
Yes.
Amendment? Yes, thank you.
Can
All
you zoom-
those,
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
pardon. Can you just zoom out so we can see the whole list, please?
Yep.
it's a great question. We'll make sure, especially those on Zoom can also see it.
So basically, these are changes to the plan commission's recommendation. These are 11 changes to the plan commission's recommendation, just amending that, but not taking action on the ordinance itself. That's what I'm, just for clarification.
No, Brian, if you go to that little bar in the bottom.
Yeah, but on my screen, I've got with the Zoom stuff on at the same time, so
Oh,
yeah.
that is
I
tricky.
have 6 different screens up at the same time.
Could you just scroll down a little bit? 'Cause
So we
we're
can
missing
see
11.
11.
So keeping, if we can, keep one. Well, almost a little bit more.
Just take out a
me one
space
second.
somewhere.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Put our glasses on.
I read these so that folks on Zoom don't have to try to get their readers on.
And to clarify, the item number 2, my recommendation is to not make the width of garages lakeshore specific.
So number 1 is definition of impervious surface area, Article 1. Number 2 is allowable width of street facing garages in SRM and SRH districts, Article 2, not lakeshore specific. Article 3 is accessory buildings associated with community and market garden land use, Article 3. A is 10.03.262, clarify raised garden beds included in detached accessory buildings. B is keep cap on square footage to 1,200 square footage just for community and market garden. Number 4 is vehicle access standards, Article 6. Number 5 is in-building parking versus surface parking, Article 7. Number 6 is bird-friendly glass design standards. Number 7 is rezoning Middleton Airport from PD. Is it PDD?
Should be PDD.
Right.
Okay.
It's
To-
PPD right now.
Well, it's gonna be PUD in a minute.
It's going to be the PPD.
All these fair points to Air District. And excellent work, everyone. Number 8, add cultivation as conditional use for Air District as plans for consumption for farm animals allowed on site, Article 3 definition. Number 9 is number of feather signs permitted on a lot. Number 10, can we maybe do some spaces on number 10?
It's 3307 High Road.
Yeah, the address is 3307 High Road. Property designation, number 11 is existing PUD, PPD, parenthetical addition.
So a clarification as to what amendments are actually being approved, because we're just saying number of feather signs permitted on a lot. We're not providing any further language. We're just throwing it back to the planning department and saying, you guys come up with something? Is that what we're suggesting? I mean, I'm just using that.
Yeah,
as an
no, I
Good
see I
example.
understand your point. And yeah, I don't have a recommendation for the number of signs to allow. I just know it's greater than 1.
Right, and I guess, because this list is very vague, and so I don't know if we're saying everything that Mark said in his memo we're approving. I guess I'm just kind of not sure what it is exactly we're sending forth. Yeah.
Madam Chair, might I offer a suggestion? So what I would suggest is that if you adopt these 11 items, it would be the items that are included in the staff memo, unless they've been further modified by your discussion tonight. And we can go back and look at the tape and see what that was. plus the additional items that were not part of the memo, those would get added to a further redlined version of the zoning ordinance that would come back to you for your consideration on January 16th as a first reading. I think that just would be the path of clearest understanding of what you're agreeing to or not agreeing to, as the case may be.
I think that's reasonable.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
With that, all those in favor of everything you just said, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. I think we talked about two parts. And it sounds like in that sharing, they're going to come back to us. Mark, is that accurate? Once those are added into the ordinance for review at that time for chapter 10, is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah, your next packet will have these highlighted as red line changes.
Great. Now, do we need to vote to delay that first reading, or can we move on to the second?
I would just postpone it to a future meeting. You don't have to put the date in case for whatever reason we need more time, but just postpone to a future meeting. If it's ready by January 16th, it'll be in the packet for January 16th.
Okay, so can I move on to the second item?
I would move to continue that to a future meeting. That would be the motion.
Okay, so council, is there a motion? Alder Schaefer?
Just as I said.
Excellent. Thank you.
Focus, I'll second.
Thank you, Alder Wilkes. Any discussion?
What is the motion specifically?
To continue discussion of chapter 10 to a future meeting.
Postpone it.
Continue to a future meeting is the same as postpone.
Okay.
Excellent.
What about chapter 22 and 33?
I don't think we've taken those up
We're
yet.
doing those up.
Okay.
That's just chapter 10.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, did I do the
Just
all
like
in
I said.
favor part?
Not yet.
Okay, discussion's done. All right, all those in favor of postponing chapter 10 to a future meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, moving on to number 2, ordinance to repeal and recreate chapter 22 signs of the Middleton Municipal Code. Signs. There was a question before during your discussion.
Well, the feather sign.
Was that the feather sign?
Yeah.
Okay.
I also have one about
Take the floor.
building mounted sign,s
Or was that lighting? Was that
Building
lighting?
mounted lighting. Sorry, that was lighting.
Okay. That is sign
I'm
lighting,
losing it.
or is that the outdoor lighting?
That's outdoor lighting.
Outdoor.
Fantastic. We're gonna hold that.
Yeah.
All right. Can you go over maybe just signs for a minute? Help us catch our breath after our list of things. Maybe get us to the PowerPoint on slide on signs.
Yeah, I don't recall, other than mentioning what was stated at the public hearing, there hasn't been any changes to the sign ordinance since before the public hearing. So I didn't highlight any of that in the sign code. The
Okay.
feathered sign discussion from earlier applies to the sign code, obviously.
My
So,
apologies.
no,
I have that out of order.
That's all right. I thought about pointing it out, but we're getting the sentiment of what you're doing. It's fine.
That sounds good. Thank you for that. And thank you for your patience. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? I guess we should move first to a motion. My apologies. Is there a motion on the first reading of chapter 22 signs?
We haven't dealt with the issue about the feathers. so that's-
Yeah, I would recommend postponing all of these so that they're adopted in the same meeting as first reading and second reading, just because they all refer to each other and work together.
And then the feathered signs
I
would be
move we
Right.
postpone,
I will second.
continue the discussion.
excellent. Any discussion on postponing chapter 22 signs?
Just to clarify, it's postponed to a future meeting.
The future meeting? Thank you. In that case, all those in favor of postponing the ordinance to repeal and recreate chapter 22 signs of the Middleton Municipal Code to a future meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Number 3, ordinance to repeal and recreate Chapter 33 outdoor lighting of the Middleton Municipal Code. Do I have a motion?
Can I answer the question that was mentioned earlier?
Can I wait till we have?
Oh,
a
I'm
motion?
sorry,
But I
sure.
was thinking the same thing.
I thought you were going to postpone. Yep.
Reading my mind.
Got it.
Do I have a motion?
I will move to postpone to a future meeting.
Second.
Great. Thank you for reminding me about the question. Can you remind me what the question is?
Sure.
and
There was a
answer?
question from Council President Nelson regarding on-building lighting. And I have the ordinance in front of me now that's in your packet. And there is an addition to it. It currently reads, this is page 5 of the ordinance. And I think Brian will be there shortly. Page, yeah, 2 more. Yep. Right. A little. Yep. On building lighting. It's shifted a little bit. It's number 3. Wait a minute.
Oh, you're in signs.
On the packet.
Oh,
it's-
this is
it's,
signs. Okay,
Page
sorry.
421.
Yep. Thank you. I'm like, that does not look like what's on my screen.
Near the bottom of the page. On building lighting.
Right.
Oh, go back. 421.
Yes.
Right
3A.
There,
Right there,
right
right
there,
there.
right there.
So
Perfect.
number 1 has been added. Exempt from this requirement are decorative light fixtures with frosted glass lamps and any fixtures using a light bulb with a factory rating of 500 lumens or less. So that is to clarify that the decorative lighting is still allowed as long as it meets those standards. Whether that's sufficient to answer the other question you asked, I don't know whether that
So
addresses.
the existing lighting is just brighter. Is this what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean,
I would say it's more than 500.
yeah, oh yeah, I mean, this is probably this is a pretty significant policy issue. There has been a comment about, do we want to restrict building lighting like we have? You know, it goes to the heart of whether you want to see less light output in the community to be compliant with dark sky provisions. Obviously, some of these building lighting installations are quite attractive, but they also add for some unnecessary light. That's where the ordinance stands right now.
I'm just going to add it. I didn't read the final language on outdoor lighting, but I did ask the last plan commission if we could ask those who are not new builds or renovating if they could try to meet night sky initiatives. And I say that because I'm fairly certain my own house might have too bright of lights or were put in many moons ago. And so we ourselves can try and do better. But I say that because all of the lights together add up. One of the other things that we talked about in Plan Commission was car dealers, because they traditionally close shop and yet the lights are on for a long time, like throughout the night. Now, part of that is for security, but I do want to commend one of the auto dealers off in your district off Airport Road and Century, where they come together. From my recall, they've turned off 2 out of every 3 lights at night. And they've added sort of a bumper so that it doesn't spread all the way out. It just goes towards the cars, which is the point. And especially if we're talking about sustainability and using less energy, these were the things that we often were discussing in Plan Commission. And it's neat that they either heard us or they're taking the initiative on their own. So even if this asks them to do more, I appreciate that they are trying. So bravo. Any other discussion on outdoor lighting standards? Chapter 33, hearing none. All those in favor of,
Defer, was the motion to defer.
thank you so
Which will
much.
also give our legal attorney
Extra time. Well, you know, he's welcome to the first meeting. What's an exciting one? All those in favor of deferring to a future meeting, chapter 33 outdoor lighting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Ordinances, second reading, ordinance to create chapter 35 of Middleton Municipal Code extraterritorial zoning ordinance. Is there a motion?
Schaefer moves.
Walter Schaefer, any second?
This is Jackson, I'll second.
Thank you, Alder Jackson. Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving chapter 35 of Middleton Municipal Code, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to resolutions, resolution 2024-01, adopting certain equipment rates for contracted services and ordinance violation assessments.
This is Haniro. I recommend approval as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Is there a second?
This is Jackson, I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the resolution 2024-01, adopting certain equipment rates, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Up next is discussion, updates on committees, commissions, and boards by council members and mayor. I know it's a new year, so we may not have been meeting. Any hot topics? I will say we are observing Martin Luther King Day in the month of January. That's not on there, but just thank you to everyone who is supporting that. And with that, we will move in to convene in closed session, and I'm going to read this paragraph. Convene into closed session pursuant to section 19.851G Wisconsin statutes, 19.851G for conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. The commission will discuss litigation and potential settlement of matters concerning Adams Outdoor Sign versus the city of Middleton et al. And do we need to take a roll call vote?
Yes. So you need a motion in a second.
I move that we go into closed session.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Jackson, I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none.
Okay, roll call vote. Schaefer,
Yes.
Wilkus,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Mayor Kuhn,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Haniro,
Yes.
Lorman,
Yes.
Crow.
Yes.
Okay, we have a unanimous vote to go into closed session. Give us a couple minutes to get the room ready.
Anybody needs to get water, please go ahead.